Whether you're trying to get a promotion at work, negotiating with the in-laws concerning which holiday gathering you will or won't attend, or pitching your startup to a panel of VCs, I believe we're all in the business of sales. We just don't know it yet. But if you can stick around, I promise that you'll get better. So hey, pretentious engineer here. I know you didn't ask, but welcome to your weekly one-on-one, where I answer some of the internet's most challenging questions. Now, I've made it my personal mission to help engineers, global leaders, and entrepreneurs find their way. And I'm excited to kick off a new series on SKOOL called Sales as Storytelling. Now, while we may have working frameworks of what sales feels like from a, say, poor experience at the car dealership, it can actually be quite an honorable profession. I've spent a decade of my life advancing surgical robotics, VR, and AR technologies as an engineer, global leader, and entrepreneur. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever heard was from an old-timer engineer who told me it's the engineers who know how to tell stories who really go places. So let's start approaching sales as storytelling and see where that can take you next. Now, this journey is going to take us through quite a few modules. We have 3 main sections, the first of which is empathy. So a lot of times if we've had a poor sales experience, it's because the salesperson started off by trying to position their product or just talk at us as opposed to listen to us and ask exploratory questions. So the first 3 modules are going to focus on how to do empathetic listening as a salesperson, how to have intellectual curiosity, really understand the individual you're serving, try to uncover their origin story. And then another key part of this is finding void, virtue, and vision. I can't take credit for this. I'll figure out who that is on the actual module, but basically we have these past voids in our life. For instance, if we never had enough food at home, we now might really care about feeding the homeless, things like that. We have present virtues, so what's driving us, what's our moral compass today, as well as future vision, like our desired future state. And when you can start to figure out those 3 V's from the past, present, and future, it can allow you to position a strong or compelling offer. Now, the second main part, which has 3 modules in it, will be reframing. So reframing is kind of taking this individual's initial worldview or perspective of their situation and reframing it and kind of shifting their perspectives so that it's more in alignment with what you can serve them with concerning your product. So the first part is a story retold, where we will actually retell them their origin story, but add some different nuance to it that allows us to see if we can provide value or weave ourselves into that story. Finally, we want to bring their story, bring them into our story. So start to establish your own credibility, your starting point, where you've landed and where you're going, and seeing if the 2 paths overlap. And then finally, you want to draw a new map together on a different way they could get to their desired future state. So there may be a pathway they weren't aware of until they started chatting with you, and you want to draw that in community with them so they get excited about that. Now, the final part is the actual journey, right? You reframe their perspectives, and then let's take them on a journey with whatever we're going to serve them with, whatever product. So this is going to start off with a guide on the side. So how do you kind of come alongside them in the journey and let them know like what's in scope for your services? So if you think about like what we do a lot of like brand management and consulting. So helping them understand what I will do, what I won't do, and what the partnership will feel like. So give them a perspective of what taking you on as a client would feel like. The next part is provisions for the journey. So this is like the sticky part. A lot of times people start with this too early. I mean, one part's price, but also what time commitment's necessary from this individual to get the results they desire, the money they have to put in, what they may have to sacrifice that they enjoy besides those factors. So help them understand if they really want to get to this new outcome, if they want to follow this new map and work with you in that, then this is what it will take. It's the what would it take conversations. And then finally, take your first step. So that's the whole sales as storytelling. We're going to run through all that, but today we're focused on the first module, which is intense intellectual curiosity. So let's get to work. So when I thought about drawing some iconography for what intense intellectual curiosity would feel like, I initially wanted to draw a comparison, like a bad state and a good state. And the bad state was a megaphone just blaring at an ear. And that is the worst sales dynamic you could possibly create. And we're going to talk about how that feels. That's our first question, is like, how does it feel being sold? But then what I started to land on is just like make it big. And what we're trying to get at is if we could actually listen, that's going to spark an idea. a lot of times we may go into any conversation of like, I want a promotion. Well, that's a I want. How do you actually start asking your boss and your boss's boss the right questions to understand what are they looking for you to demonstrate in order to get to the next opportunity? That's a completely different framework as opposed to I want and blaring the want. How do you actually start to perceive what their needs are and how you reframe their perspectives about what you've delivered over the last 6 months, but also what you can demonstrate in the next 2 to 3 months to check the right boxes to get to the next level. So that's sales, right? So what I want to do for our first exercise, and this module is going to be quick because I have to pick up my son from school. My wife's picking up the daughters. She's got the baby, and I don't want him to wait. So we're going to fly through these questions a little quicker than I prefer. But there's going to be 8 more classes. So you can pause and go deeper if you need to. So I have some notes to cheat with. Let me grab my little tablet. Right color is selected. So how does it feel to be sold? The first thing that a lot of us have probably felt in certain situations is this idea of slimy or sleazy, or like a dude opening up a trench coat, right? Like, do you know that reference? Like, you want to buy some gum, or there's like something feels a little bit sketch when people are selling for the wrong motives and they're just trying to push product to hit their numbers. Whereas there are certain areas where sales is actually like quite honorable, and we'll get into that down the road. But the first feeling we can often feel is like, oh, please don't talk to me. Like you're walking through Bass Pro Shop and someone's trying to get your attention because they're trying to sell you, you know, a credit card that you don't need. And they're just doing their job, but everyone can feel just the of that, right? Nobody likes that. So we don't want to create that situation in any context when we're selling and trying to influence other people. It just creates high friction and everyone doesn't like it. The second item that you will probably feel, especially if they are, I don't want to say competent, but kind of know how to move people along, you'll probably feel some kind of pressure, you know. For instance, if you're in the auto space and you went for a test drive and you really aren't sure if this is the car you want and where you want to buy it, you're going to get one of these things called a trial close, where they're like, so what's it going to take to get you into this vehicle today? And you'll be like, oh, well, I need to call my wife, right? We do all the, oh, I need to's because you don't want to buy it right now. And then you're going to feel this push, well, let me give you more information. Let's just come inside. And eventually you're sitting down and they start throwing numbers, and then you have sunken time fallacy or cost where you've like put 3 or 4 hours into the dealership. And now there's like, well, it's not as much as, it's a little more than I wanted to pay, but I'm going to get a car. And then you go home with a car, but you feel push through that. Some level of time sensitivity is important for people to make a decision to purchase, but sometimes that pressure is also off-putting. I don't like experiencing that. It's likely the people you're trying to influence don't like that. So how do you do that in an honorable way? And then the next one, which is kind of similar to pressure, is strain and tension. And the reason I kind of highlight this, it's a different feeling than pressure. Pressure is pushing someone towards a decision, whereas strain or tension is causing some level of uncertainty where they feel like they're moving ahead, but it's causing something that they're going to wake up the next morning and not feel good about the decision they made. And we don't want to ever be sold into that. Like that mindset is always uncomfortable. It creates what we call high friction. Like people can move forward with like a low friction purchase. An example of low friction purchase is Amazon. I know that I need to get some Orgain protein powder because I like it and I can buy it in Japan and it's great. So I go on Amazon, I search Orgain, I click one button and it arrives in a day. There's no thought. That's very dangerous with certain purchases, right? We don't feel money the way we used to. But the strain and tension is when you're really being pushed towards a scenario that doesn't seem to be good for you or the person you're selling. So we don't want to create those situations. But what I want to flip this to, what we're going to do next for a question, is how's it, wow, my grammar's garbage. How's it feel being heard? And we're going to get to how to do that. Do you like being heard? I like being heard. I like being listened to. You know, that's why I get really frustrated when I say, no, I'm okay. And then they keep pushing. Or I was at an airport once and there was a big line that I was in, and I was a little bit confused about which line I was supposed to be in. And this guy's like, hey, you know, if you go through this process and just pre-register, like you can skip into this other line that's way faster. I was like, oh yeah, hey, that sounds great. Thank you so much, airport person. And then like he was really pushing me through the stuff, and I was kind of understanding. And the last part's like, all right, now just put in your credit card, and it's gonna be $179. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And I literally went back in the same line. I had to wait another 20 minutes because of all the process I went through. Now, you could say it's my fault, but like I didn't feel heard, and I felt tricked, and he knew he was tricking me, and I said no, and he's being paid to get people enrolled in that process. So he's got to go and try to sneak another person out of the line. Like the whole thing feels bad. We don't want that in sales, right? But we have this framework that that's what sales should be, or what it is, and it doesn't have to be that way. Whereas if you approach it as a conversation, like the very first part is if you start asking exploratory questions. If you've done your research on an individual that you reached out to on LinkedIn and you want to offer them a service or something you're working on, and you know certain things about them because everyone has a social footprint and you're not creepy about it. It's another part is don't be too weird about it. But like everyone puts their life out in some capacity. Or if it's a word of mouth reference, you have an idea about somebody, get questions out there that help people talk about themselves and just start pulling little by little. Because the reality is when people feel like they're being heard and asked questions where they can share or have a platform, as opposed to be on guard, ready to receive a service they're not ready to pay for, the first thing they're going to experience out of this whole deal is it's validating. They're like, wow, you took all this time to understand me, and you took extra time to ask me a couple more questions, and you were transparent with the process of like, hey, you know, is it okay if I just ask a few questions because I want to see if there's a fit here? I don't want to waste your time, right? People are like, yeah, don't waste my time. That's awesome. So that's one way. Another part is if people are asking really good questions, so that you start to feel heard and validated in these discussions, is that it's actually insightful. Now, again, we're just holistically looking at where sales could go in the right direction. If somebody takes the time to understand you, your current state, where you're trying to go, a good example is fitness, right? I've done all these different half marathons, but I have a lot of knee issues. This is like a fake example. I'd really love to run another one. What would it take to get me trained up for that? And then they say, well, hey, I have this, you know, unique approach to using the knees over toe guys methodology. It's going to take you about 16 weeks of training. It's going to be pretty challenging, but I'd be committed to seeing you achieve that goal. And there's a couple things we could do to make sure you do it with less pain. That would bring an insight into your world. You're like, oh, I hadn't considered that I would actually be able to run another half marathon after the knee injuries that I've had. Tell me more. That's what happens when people feel hurt. And then the last one to build on that is that this is genuinely helpful. When people ask questions and they actually care about you, and then they take those questions into consideration and make an offer to you that makes sense, it helps you. And you don't mind paying for things that help you. I pay for things that help me all the time. I buy all kinds of software and crap to run this business because it helps me do more faster and have a larger impact. I like buying things that help me or are fun or serve others. So there are ways to sell products face-to-face or services, or convince your in-laws that you're going to give them Christmas, but you really want to host Thanksgiving this year because you don't want all the kids to travel. There are ways to have those conversations in a way that actually makes these other partners feel heard, and it's by the questions you ask. And we're going to get into the how in the praxis section, but my son gets out of school very much shortly, so I need to bike quickly, and we'll do these questions when I come back, I guess. Hey, it's Joe from the future. Now, we picked up all the kids from school. One of them went off to the grocery store with the missus, so I got the baby. Emiko, my middle child, is drinking yellow flavored water, and my son's upstairs doing who knows what. So it's likely this training will end like Lord of the Flies. Hopefully not with Piggy. But let's jump into praxis. So praxis just means taking something you've learned and putting it into practice. So I'm going to ask... Oh, man, don't break my foot. I don't... You want music? Put those on. I'll give you music. Here, do you need music? Can I give you music without this ruining everything? Here, let's see if we can make her happy. Does this change anything? Yep, listen to your music. All right. Anyway, Lord of the Flies. I'm like, should I cut that or just make you wait? Probably make you wait. So I'm going to ask 3 questions that I want you to think about, and I want you to reflect on anyone you're engaging in any kind of sales interaction in whatever context, how you can do these 3 things better. Because it's likely if you start to focus on these 3 like systemic root cause kind of things, the rest will just flow in a good direction. So people start feeling like they're being heard as opposed to sold. So let's get to it. The first one is, this one's a little long. How could you be more diligent anticipating your customers' UMN, which is unmet needs, ahead of time? So an unmet need is basically it's an unmet need, but it's an area where someone has a pain point or something within their life is not being served well. So it's an opportunity for that pain to be alleviated and for them to have a more efficient solution that serves them better. Now, the goal of this question is to think diligence requires work and effort. I can open that orange for you. Yes. This is literally how every class is going to end up. Yep. Enjoy your music, love. But basically, diligence is like putting your hands to work and being really thoughtful. So a lot of times, like I was looking for an international assignment within Johnson & Johnson when I was a co-op. Didn't end up working out. I ended up getting it about 6 years later. But I was going through a series of one-on-ones connecting across the organization. And it ultimately led me on a path towards like chatting with higher level directors and VPs just to understand, is there an opportunity for me globally within Johnson & Johnson right when I'd be hired full time? And a lot of times with these individuals, I'd learn about how to sit outside the office, right? You'd go into like the secret corridors of J&J. Here you go, Emiko. Come take your orange. What's your orange? You're welcome. So you go and down the secret corridors to like where all the VPs sat, and they're in a little corner, right, away from everybody else. And you'd talk to their admin, and you'd sit. And I'd sit for 15 minutes and try to think about all the questions they could have. How are they going to view what I'm going to present to them? Because I'd come in with a one-pager saying like, hey, this is the life of Joe. This is what I've been working on. This is what I'm interested in, trying to see if there's a fit. Just exploring, is there someone else that I should talk to if it's not you? And often these individuals had heard about me from others. Emiko, go play somewhere else. All right, she's not going to play somewhere else, so we'll see if this is even helpful. She's got her feet in a box of fruit. But I'd sit, and sweat for 12 minutes ahead of time, just thinking about all the different questions, all the things they could say, push back. And this really built a skill, though. It was anxiety deriving, sure, but it was really like practicing ahead of time of like, who is this individual? Where do they sit within the business? What kinds of problems do they have at their level? Why would they care about me? How do I not waste their time? And when you do that with anyone you're about to meet with to position an offer, whether it's I want to be promoted or I don't want to travel to this region for this holiday because it's too expensive, whatever you're selling, whatever kind of situation, if you could put in the time to just diligently anticipate their leanings towards or away from whatever you're offering, it allows you to enter the conversation with better questions. And those questions can allow them to feel more heard, which leads to the second question, my question. Thank you for the flexibility as I learn how to raise 4 children in Japan and somehow teach about sales. All right. How could you be more thoughtful in considering, I spelled that wrong, we're going to move on, considering how Your questions make someone feel? This is literally a question you could spend years working on. So much of work is really the way that we shape people's perspectives through feelings. You good, Akio? Yeah, he's just coughing. He's fine. Oh, good? He's good. He's distracted. So a lot of our questions and a lot of the ways we build interactions and trust with people make them feel certain ways. And our feelings, as much as our logic, if not more, actually drive our action. And action is really like change management. If you could change or influence someone's action in a way that's beneficial for them and beneficial for you, that's a win-win in sales. That's what you want. Yeah, these are candies. You want me to open this candy? Gosh, all right, go eat at the table. Gosh, Father of the Year here. I'm gonna get a pass on that. Yeah, go eat it. It's sugar candy. Just go to... More. Oh my gosh, you want more? Okay. More. I can only give you these 2. Go eat. More. Okay, here's this one too. Gosh, that laugh. Cackle. I don't know if I can open it. Oh, look at lucky you. All right, go to the table. All of them. No more candies. So, have you figured out how you could be more thoughtful with the questions you ask and how they make someone feel? Because a lot of times, especially if we come from more of like a dry science engineering background, when we think about questions, we become like very data driven, very statistics driven, lead times, costs. All these things are important and we should make decisions based off of them. But also a lot of decisions are emotional, driven off of intuition on where people think things should go, or how many people we really need for this project based on a perceived risk. And how do you elevate that ask? Elevating that ask is sales, how you're positioning what your project team needs in order to accomplish what the greater business needs to do and why that's so significant. And how do you want leadership to feel about it? Do you want them to feel freaked out that if they don't put people on this project, it's going to crash and burn? Not a good story. It's a story that sometimes helps in crisis. Or do you want to help them understand they can cut X amount of time off the project and have lower risk to the patient if they give you the people you need? So there's different ways to position questions and to facilitate conversation that tells different stories. Little man's trapped. It's funny, there's this great author, Noah Kagan. I keep looking back just to make sure if my son runs out of stressed. But Noah Kagan, he talks about this idea of like there's no perfect time in his book $1 Million Offers. Or no, $1 million Weekend or something. But he just talked about this idea of like now, not how. Like, just do it. Do it now. And that's like what this is. It's like I just need to start this school class. And it's not perfect and pretty, but it's the life I live. And oh my God, it's great. This is how all my worksheets are too. Buddy, you're gonna be okay. I'm gonna get milk, and then we'll do the last question. All right. Well, that was fun. We got one more question. I have 2 kids upstairs playing a game. I'm not sure how long that's gonna hold. And Akio is holding his own bottle, feeding himself, which is quite nice. But I think we're gonna get interrupted. So let me write this question really fast. How could you become genuinely more curious and enthusiastic about your clients? This is really the key question. So let me think about this for a second as I wait to see if my son comes down. Okay, so like my brain is always in like 4 directions. I think this is the idea of like having a lean in posture of when you're in a conversation with individuals, like, are you on the edge of your seat, trying to hear what they're going to say next, trying to anticipate what they're passionate about, what they're trying to solve, and to really be in it with them? Do you also lean back at times and create space to just see where they expand and where they go? This first 3 classes on empathy is so key because it makes people fully feel heard. And from there, you can position the right offer. But I'm going to end it there because the parade's coming back downstairs. See you on the next one. Oh, and I forgot, like, if you want to hang out with us on SKOOL and you don't know what that is, there's a link below to join a waitlist to learn about one-on-one with a pretentious engineer and where I want to take my community and how you can join. I'm going to take a limited amount of people into that community from those who apply. So feel free to check it out and maybe see you in SKOOL, which would be great. All right, bye friends.